Hello and welcome. You're watching FYI. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. Now, COVID figures in the country are showing a declining trend. Our vaccination numbers are gradually picking up, not at the speed that we want, but they are gradually picking up. So what lies ahead of us? So much talk is happening regarding the third wave. What should be guiding our vaccine policy when it comes to that? Well, there is one key that will really, in the ideal world at least, should be deciding which way our vaccine policy is going, how do we take care, and how do we stop a third wave from coming in. And that key is actually the seropositivity survey. So on the program today, we tell you everything you need to know about seropositivity, and then we also look at it state by state, sometimes cities as well, to try and understand that when the third wave hits us, it will hit us, which parts of the country are going to be most vulnerable. So without any further ado, let's get into our explainer. So first up, what exactly is a sero-survey? Now, COVID serological survey analyze the number of people who have developed antibodies to the virus. Such surveys often are a way to give us a rough estimate of sorts on how much population has actually been exposed to the virus, both symptomatically and asymptomatically. How is it done? Well, this is essentially a blood test. So samples are collected and the presence of antibodies in the serum is looked into. It is said to be more accurate immunity profile than those created by data collected by vaccination coverage or even disease surveillance. Remember the testing figures that we get? There could be so many people asymptomatic. So the actual number really is reflected in the seropositivity survey. So what makes it so important? And this is really the key. Now, seropositivity is the guiding force, but like I said, in the ideal world, it should be the guiding force for vaccination policy in the country. It can provide information on the proportion of the population that has seroprotection versus which is still susceptible to the virus. Because it helps track the asymptomatic people as well and those who do not have common symptoms. It is used by WHO, for example, to track measles, rubella as well. They give you an idea of how infection rates are progressing. It is helping governments monitor COVID-19 trends as well. The virus will spread, remember, in areas with less seropositivity. Simply put, a lower seropositivity means more vulnerability, and a higher seropositivity means higher antibody cover and then relatively moving closer towards herd immunity. But there are several challenges as well when it comes to seropositivity. It can be pretty challenging to carry out as it is very expensive. People might not be willing to provide their blood fluids, which may not be accurate representation of the populations who are seroprevalent. The larger the sample size, the more precise the data really is. Our sample size in India, for example, is growing. However, it can be unbiased estimates, so with a smaller size, but people's participation needs to be truly representative of that population. So if sample size is key, how exactly has it been different in the country? Remember, so far there have been 3 national sero surveys in the country. We'll take you through all of them step by step. The first national survey was actually held between May to early June in 2020, where about 24,000 samples only were collected. These were random samples taken up in community-based survey. It was also picked up in about 700 villages and wards. About 70 districts and 21 states of the country were identified for this. The second survey, that was in August of 2022, and why I'm emphasizing on the time, because it's not just the sample, remember the sample size, but the timing also, which is very crucial. We'll tell you that on the program as well. Second survey, the samples went up gradually. It went up to about 29,000 at least, and the same number of people were picked up. The same districts were taken into account as well. The third national survey, and this is crucial, happened between November and December of 2020. The general population picked up was about 28,500. This time around, people as well as health workers were picked up. About 7,000 of them were health workers. And now India is gearing up for the 4th national survey, which will happen in roughly about a couple of days from now. It's scheduled to start in June, and this time population above 6 years of age is also going to be covered in this. Remember the second wave, which infected so many younger people, kids as well. So that cover has also been established in the 4th wave. So as we talk about these surveys, what was the positivity rate now, both in first, second and the third seropositivity survey that happened? The first one found 0.73% of people in the protective layer. That meant so few people really, adults only it was. It found that only they had the seropositivity cover. The second one, this time it included 10 years and above as well. It went up to 6.6%. And the third one, 21.4%. Out of this, 25.3 were of the 10 and 17 years old survey, and only 3.5% of infections detected and recorded in the other age group. So what does it really tell us? What is the trend looking like? Questions that really arise out of this survey. How much seropositivity is actually enough? That is key, because that will tell us how close we are to achieving herd immunity. How do we get there really? If a dip is noted, why is that happening? Is waning off of antibodies, that takes place in the timing. How crucial is that? These are some of the questions that we will be looking at with our experts today. On that note, let's go to our panel. We're very delighted to have with us on the program. We've got Dr. Rakesh Mishra. He's the director for the Center for Cellular and Microbiology in Hyderabad. We've got Dr. Rachna Kucheria back with us on the program. We've got Dr. Geeta Vani, Senior Principal Scientist and Head Science Communication at CSIR. Very important to get her inputs on this as well. And shortly we'll be joined by Dr. R. Ebenezer. He joins us from the Apollo Specialty Hospitals. Let me first go to Dr. Mishra. Dr. Mishra, we've looked at the overall national survey, but very important to highlight the sample size is still quite small for us to make any decisive sort of comments on which way this is going. Your thoughts on how key is this going to be in deciding India's vaccine policy and also telling us what lies ahead of us?
Yeah, it's something very, very important for us to know how far the virus has been, how deep it has penetrated in what population group, and the sero survey is one reliable way of exploring that. And once we know how many people have been exposed and obviously are antibody positive, which means they are at least partly protected, that helps us in figuring out where we have to focus on the vaccine, which means if there are people more vulnerable, which means seronegativity is more in some places. So that means that's where the next wave is likely to be more damaging. So therefore we should be prepared by two ways. One is go and vaccinate more there to make more people safe, and also have more healthcare preparedness, because if the next wave comes, there are the places where people will be more infected. While in other places where there's, let's say, seropositivity this time, I guess in some cities at least it will be in 60s, 65% or something even more. So that means we are inching closer towards probably what is called as the herd immunity. And there, if we increase a little bit vaccination, then we might actually achieve the herd immunity, and that is one way of being safe. So it tells us many things, how to go for vaccination. That will depend upon the government strategy, availability of the vaccines and so on, and also preparing for the next wave which may happen, and we must be prepared unlike we were at this time.
Right. But Dr. Mishra, you mentioned cities, and I want to sort of shift our focus to that now. And if we can have the graphics up on the city-wise that we calculated, Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, we took some overall, sort of metros which have had larger sero surveys to try and understand that. Delhi, for example, Dr. Mishra, about 70 to 80% of people already got COVID. If that's the case, can we say, same for Mumbai as well, can we say that a third wave, for example, in these cities can be averted? Or would you say this will all depend on how long these antibodies last, and then the all crucial thing of new variants coming into play?
Yeah. So you answered the question already, that the immunity will last maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months, or 1 year. We don't know. And so if the immunity is waning, and after some time, let's say wave, today we have 70%, and next wave comes after several months, and then by then some antibodies are lost. So that means people become vulnerable. Or we can have a variant which can escape the immune system. So these are the possibilities, and that is why no matter what else is happening, the social vaccine is going to be the key thing how we are going to fight this pandemic. All this seropositivity, vaccine percentage, and all this are indication we can strategize, but we have to in the end be careful that this virus can change, and therefore the whole game can change.
Right. So we have to keep that in mind, and very important to underline this, that while a lot of people, as unlock is happening in the country, especially in metros which have been under strict lockdown, very important for people to remember you might be vaccinated, there might be seropositivity, but you don't know. We just know very little about the virus even now. So we got to be careful, and we got to continue to follow the COVID protocols. Having said that, let me get in Dr. Geeta at this point. Dr. Geeta, how crucial then will this fourth sero survey be? Because it will happen at a time when we have seen the peak of the second wave. We've seen so far at least maximum numbers happen, and we have seen vaccination kick in as well. What are the key things that you should be looking out for now?
Yeah, no, I think having said that, serological survey is an important tool. It does have its own limitations, as you also pointed out, and but I think this is going to be valuable also because now vaccination has started. So one has to, account for even vaccination status when you are doing these surveys, because we know that when you vaccinate, no vaccine is 100% efficacious, right? Not everybody produces antibody. It could be 70%, it could be 80%, it could be 90%. So there is going to be a certain percentage of population who may not develop antibodies. Even that could also be studied when you're doing the serological survey. So you're not only looking at people who have recovered and have antibodies, you could also look at the vaccination in a real world experiment, because rather than clinical trial studies. So I think we also have to look at that, and also a good correlation will be to see the variants and kind of correlate with the genomic surveillance also. That would also be a valuable data, I think, when you look at what are the variants that are prevalent there and how is the serological positivity coming out. I think these are some things which are going to be very valuable going forward if we have to develop a strategy, be it vaccination or any other way forward.
Right. Dr. Rachna Kochariya, I just want to understand a little bit in detail about how exactly these sero surveys are done. We understand that, it's essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is testing people for the IgG antibodies, which is a basic tell on how much of protection is actually there in the body. But the fact is not everybody has only IgG antibodies. There could be T-cell immunity as well. So how does one really calculate this?
Thanks, Sonal, it's a tough question, and you also did the explainer really well. Let me try and answer this. Getting a funny echo for some reason.
We'll try and fix that. Go ahead.
It'll be right now. That's exactly. I'll echo what Dr. Geeta was saying. These are exactly the kind of studies we need to figure out what amount of antibody is giving you protection. So, just taking that thought a little further, you need prospective ongoing studies hand in hand with the seropositivity studies that are going in. So, for example, those people, those 10,000 people, let's say, take a number, you check the antibodies in that were checked in February. Also check the clinical outcomes. What happened to those people? What % of those people got the infection? What % got severe COVID? What % died? So you're correlating clinical outcomes with the seropositivity. And that will give you some indication. The answer to your question is what amount, what number is required for the amount of protection that we need, whether it's from the infection, whether it's from severe disease or death. And I would extend that to as again Dr. Geeta said, to post-vaccine after dose 1. So again, follow that same cohort, split it up. After dose 1, what % actually got the infection or the disease? And then what are the antibody levels in those people that are correlating with the clinical outcomes? So these kind of studies on ground right now should go hand in hand, in my opinion, with the seroprevalence. And I've been reading, I think the government is planning, but they are due as of now. We've got masses of clinical information as crores of vaccines, as well as, lakhs of tests will go on in this seroprevalence survey that's being planned. And I think with good planning, if they combine the clinical outcomes data with the antibody quantification and qualification, we'll get some very powerful information that will guide the next set of our policies. And also as clinicians, be able to give our patients answers when they come up and say, I have 300 antibodies, or I have 3,000, or a person who had COVID just has 30 anti-spike neutralizing antibodies. There are some kits available now. And another who didn't have COVID has 400. Right now, we don't have answers to this. So those hand-in-hand studies, clinical studies with the antibody seroprevalence studies, one thing. And the second thing, again, Dr. Geeta alluded to it, also tie in the genetic profiling studies of the variants, pick up samples from hospitals, from OPDs, from various strata of patients, from mild to moderate to severe, and correlate them with the variants. Do this prospectively so you can predict and respond and plan and not have to react in the manner that we did.
Right. In agreement with everything that you said, simple question then is, the follow-up to that, do you think India has the infrastructure right now to do this?
I think if we have the will, we have the brain power, we have the network of over 150, 200, I forget the number offhand, medical colleges with excellent departments, and it requires a will, cooperation, coordination, excellent lab people, brilliant minds, but it requires massive cooperation and coordination. I think we can do it.
All right. Let me also bring in, let me just check if we have Dr. R. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. A little late on the program, but just want to understand from you. We spoke about Delhi and Mumbai earlier on, and we tried to understand that from Dr. Mishra on how this is the positivity, seropositivity that we have right now. What does this tell us about the future of COVID in these cities? But I also, having talked about Delhi and Mumbai, also want to talk about Tamil Nadu. For example, they recently did a sero survey, and the latest one actually shows a dip in the seropositivity. So how are we to understand that?
See, coming to the seropositivity, we should be very, very careful how the study is done. That is also very, very important. See, when you do the study in concentrated localities, for example, even when they did a study in Pune, when they took only a few districts, there was high seropositivity, and they felt that the antibody prevalence was also very, very huge. So, but subsequently, when they did it at a larger level, they found out that the antibody level and the seropositivity was much at a lower level. So, when, see, this COVID wave, it is just spreading everywhere. So, even though there might be high seropositivity or antibody prevalence in certain localities, this may not be present in every other place. Even if you consider Chennai, in the first wave, it hit certain localities, certain pockets in a very severe manner. And when they did the seroprevalence and seropositivity in those particular areas, they were able to see more than 30%, 25 to the high 25% to 30%. But still, we cannot extrapolate this to the population as a whole. We need to do this at a larger level. So for that, exactly as you were telling, do we have the infrastructure? I think we do have the infrastructure. Only when we do that at a larger level, you will be able to tell exactly how much amount of prevalence is there so that we are a little bit safe. So that is very, very important. So just cannot go location-wise or locality-wise, we will be fooled. That is where we got fooled. That is why the second wave was very, very, very severe. And another important thing is what we have found out even in the ICMR studies, etc. The neutralizing antibodies, so many studies they have done. After a few particular months, there was a 20% drop in the neutralizing antibody level. So that indicates that many people after a month of 3-5 months, etc., they see a dip in their antibody protection level. So those particular population can also be more susceptible to the infection at a later date. This is also very, very important. So seroprevalence and seropositivity is very, very essential. At the same time, how we do the study and how much population we cover, that decides. whether we can take it as a benchmark. That is very, very important. We should not be fooled by going for studies here and there in certain small localities. Okay.
All right. So a couple of things that you've said. One, the sample size is very important.
Exactly.
Second, the timing is very important on when you're actually doing it, before the wave, in middle of the wave, post vaccination, or before that. That is very crucial. And then you're saying that even going forward, if these things are not kept into picture, we could actually be fooled by these sero surveys.
Exactly.
That's a strong comment to make. Dr. Mishra, your comment?
To be very frank, we have had so many sero surveys coming in through from October, September itself.
Right.
So many sero surveys. We are at 20%, we are at 25%, we are at 30%. Okay, so many surveys were there. But finally, after a particular time, when they did the same survey in the same locality, they found that the antibody profile was not the same. It was showing a small dip. So these things you have to factor in. This is very, very important.
And a good example to give there perhaps could be the fact what happened with Delhi. Before the second wave, the seropositivity survey said that every fourth person in the capital had antibody protection. Sero survey said 25% or so. But then yet we saw the numbers that we did for the second wave. Dr. Mishra, how do we put this in perspective, and what is the best way then to carry out these surveys?
See, when you say survey, there are a few things which are fundamental to this. One is sample size. If you take a smaller sample size, you don't have much meaning from there. We are a large country, we are a heterogeneous country, we have cities of different kinds, and we have lots of activities of different kinds. So sample size is very important, as much as we can. So I would say we should not aim less than 50,000 or maybe much more than that.
Okay.
Second thing is how well you randomize your sample. As you just heard, that if you go and collect sample where it is convenient to collect, then maybe those people were not infected much, or they were very heavily infected. So you get distorted data. And the third important point is to collect metadata along with that. Whether somebody was having symptom or not, whether person was tested positive or not, and when was that, and based on that, if it was tested positive 8 months ago, 10 months ago, it's seropositive, that means antibody is lasting. Whether and how many people don't know they were positive or not, but they are still showing, that means so many people were asymptomatic.
Okay.
So if you collect a lot of the whether they're vaccinated or not, how many people are vaccinated but not showing antibodies. So depend on the questionnaire that you put and collect data and randomize and have large number, you will be very, very meaningful information, and which can be very, very helpful. It will be giving you an eye opener how to make your policy and how to strategize things.
Right.
But if you don't do that and do a distorted one and or only parts of the data is used, then it will be more deceptive than useful.
I'm sorry to interrupt because we're running out of time here, but I think the key takeaway from this discussion, I wasn't really expecting this, is that at the moment, the dependability of the sero survey really is a question mark, because we need to see how it was done more than just relying on it and then getting this false notion of a antibody cover on us as well. So that's a key takeaway from this. Thank you all for joining us on this very meaningful debate. We'll see you again tomorrow, 6:30 on FYI. Bye for now.